cocktail of 80,000 chemicals in common use. I address it in this book. Radioactive isotopes, the stuff that gets into your body and irradiates just a tiny volume of cells with a high dose, they're synergistic with chemicals. In other words, one potentiates the effect of the other. So you don't know what's causing what cancers. There have been cancers around forever. The Egyptian mummies had cancers, we've found. The cancer incidence is rising, and I'm not talking about the incidence of cancer caused right now by nuclear power, because most of the waste is in the cooling pools and it hasn't started leaking in most areas, but it has in some, especially in Russia. In England, there's a dreadful mess around Sellafield, a recently named Sellafield. It was called Windscale and had a shocking accident. England, I read today, has had 1,700 accidents in reactors in the last, I don't know how many years, I think it's a couple of decades, but 1/3 was semi-serious. Sweden was 2 minutes from a meltdown 2 years ago when they lost their external electricity supply, which circulates the cooling water. And that's the way you could melt a reactor down, actually, by cutting the external supply. They have emergency diesel generators. 2 failed to fire, and at the last minute, almost 20 minutes into the accident, they got the 3rd one working. They were 2 minutes from a Chernobyl-style meltdown in a Swedish reactor, which is not a Russian-designed reactor. And the person in charge of the whole thing resigned. He got such a shock. If there is a meltdown in Europe or in North America, that will mean the end of all of this. End of the nuclear industry, end of nuclear power. When Chernobyl melted down, over 8,000 people have had their thyroids removed for thyroid cancer. There are homes full of very, very deformed children, which my colleagues, paediatricians, have never ever seen before. Many, many children have developed leukemia. They fly them to America for treatment, but normally we can't do much about it. The incidence of cancer has started to rise in Sweden as a result of Chernobyl, and in France. France has 80% of electricity from nuclear. They've done no epidemiological studies. If you don't want to find out what's happening to the population, don't do a study. It's very expensive. You've got to follow everyone who's been exposed until they die and do autopsies on all of them, and they move, so you've got to find out where they are. On the whole, it hasn't been done. The German study, which I actually have a copy of, is an excellent study. The government itself sponsored the study and then said, well, they don't think it could have been caused by nuclear power. I've seen many critiques of the study, but it is scientifically and statistically valid, and it's supported by several meta-studies or groups of studies together. Medical isotopes. We can make all the isotopes we use in medicine from cyclotrons. We don't need nuclear power plants, including Chalk River. And I know that because I rang the president of the Nuclear Medicine Society in the US some years ago when I wrote Nuclear Madness, and I asked him that question: can all the isotopes we use in medicine be made with a cyclotron? There's a long pause, and he said yes. So the nuclear industry use us as a sort of camouflage for what they're doing. Isotopes are good in medicine. They're short half-life. You often get a lower dose from a nuclear medicine examination than you do from X-ray. We have to practice medicine. We use X-rays too widely, but I'm talking about now and in the future with an industry that is a cancer-inducing industry, and it will go on for thousands of years, and we'll all be dead. I've been debating with the nuclear power people forever, and one night in Chicago in the 70s, this nuclear energy man said, we know what to do with the radioactive waste. And I said, no, you don't. He said, yes, we do. So he took me to the pub for a beer afterwards, and he said, actually, we don't know what to do with radioactive waste. He said, as far as I'm concerned, you can bury it in your own backyard. And I said, you were lying on the radio. And he said, yes. It's like me saying to a patient, look, they say, we're good engineers, we'll find a solution. Saying, well, you've got a pancreatic cancer, and you'll probably die in about 6 months, but don't worry, I'm a very good scientist, and within 20 years I'll find the cure. It's illogical, It's irrational, and there's a very good section on Yucca Mountain here where America wanted to bury their radioactive waste. It's made of pumice, which is very permeable. It's transected by 30 earthquake faults. It lies atop the aquifer that supplies Las Vegas, and I hear that you sit atop an aquifer here that many people use for their bores and for their cattle and for their farms that will become contaminated for sure with tritium. Tritium just gets into everything. We talked about workers not getting cancer. There's a thing called the healthy worker effect. You see, nuclear industry uses a standard man as their sort of example for radiation dose. A 70-kilogram white young male. Happens that children are 10 to 20 times more sensitive than the standard man. Fetus is about 1,000. Old people are, and people who are immunocompromised from cancer treatment and the like get cancer very readily from radiation. It takes up to 15 years to build a reactor. They've got to replace 440 of them in the world if they want to. So we've got to stop burning coal now. Now. And in Australia, our Prime Minister has written a climate change bill that actually contributes to the coal companies mining more coal and sending it to China. We've got a very bad Prime Minister called Rudd. He's worse than Howard. We've got to stop burning oil now. Now! So finally I want to say that I commissioned this study in America a year ago. It's called Carbon-Free, Nuclear-Free, by an excellent, brilliant physicist who's looked at all renewable energy sources, solar, wind, geothermal, conservation, tidal wave, you name it. America and you can be carbon-free, nuclear-free by 2050. This is being used by Nancy Pelosi in the Congress. It's being used by the state of Utah, by the state of Texas. This is the roadmap for the future, the prescription for survival. And when you hear nuclear energy people and coal people and oil people say there are no answers in renewable energy, that's absolutely not true. You can download this from IEER.org. IEER.org free. This is it. Prescription for survival. And think how much wind you've got and how many people, hundreds of thousands you can employ. Every house should have a solar panel in Canada. Every house should have a solar hot water system. I'm not allowed to go on any further.